Well, 11 years ago, you and I did one of these in Vancouver, the Vancouver Hotel, when BC's new car dealers presented you with the very first Lifetime Achievement Award. And we got to sit at the table across each other, tell stories, and I got to ask some questions. So 11 years later, we're here to do the same thing. So a lot of folks sent questions in, and we're looking forward to doing all of that. But I've got a few pictures we're going to show first. You'll be able to see them down there. So of course, Pattison Auto Group. There's a young fella back in the day. I think that's you and Frank Baker there, isn't it?
That's who it is.
That's you and Frank Baker. So tell us about that car.
Well, this picture with Frank Baker was taken in front of that. That's where I started in business, at 18th and Canby in Vancouver.
And what year?
1961.
Yeah. Put that car through the window there.
Yeah, I know. And then the business progressed.
Then I went to Main Street, and when I went into the first one, where you see I put the car through the window, and we had a lot of people phoning up all the time that the car had gone through the window. That was an accident, but it wasn't. We wanted people to notice it had gone through the window. And so we started, this was at 18th and Main Street, the picture on the right. And that was my second location. And the Bentall family put up all the money. I don't know how many people here have ever heard of the Bentalls in West Vancouver. They put up all the money to build that dealership for me and made it clear that I had to pay rent and over time buy it out, whether I liked it or not. I agreed. But when I went into that first deal, I didn't have anybody, and I brought tonight with me, for anybody that's interested, I brought my first loans, the Royal Bank of Canada, when I started here in that first picture you showed. I brought this statement tonight with me that the Royal Bank at Canby and Broadway loaned me $40,000 to get started. And my wife, they wanted my wife's guarantee, she guaranteed. They told me how much equity did I have in my house. I said $7,000. They said, okay, we'll loan you the money, but you gotta sell your house and pay down.
When you had the car dealership, son, you made a move into radio.
I did.
Why did you do that?
Because I wanted to advertise.
And it worked for you.
And no, if you had radio, you could, you could advertise in the paper and so on. But if you get a radio station and you get good, when the radio station I bought was ranked at the bottom of the list in Vancouver. They had 6 or 7 radio stations. I'm talking AM then, that was pre-FM days. And so I got in, and of course I used the radio station to promote our own company. No other car dealers would deal with it, but that didn't matter. And so with radio, it started to help me boost our car and leasing company. Now leasing has become, when I started out, the car leasing and truck business I started with leasing. I knew a little bit about it. I worked for a GM dealer for 10 years called Beaumac in Vancouver. I worked for 10 years. And when I struck out, I knew what I wanted to do, and one was get in the leasing, car and truck leasing business. And so that was my first customer, was a lease customer.
So from automotive into media, what was the next step?
Well, we went from cars to radio, because we could advertise with radio. And then from radio, we went into groceries at the right time And sometimes you gotta be patient, other times you gotta move fast. But the free enterprise system today is the reason I'm here with the results we've had. Is the democratic system that people all over the world could envy what we have, and have the United States as our neighbor, which you couldn't get a better neighbor than the Americans when you do what we do in trying to grow a business and have a relative friend like we have with the Americans. British Columbia put on a World's Fair in 1986, and they asked me if I would run it, which I did. And I wasn't in my own office at one time for 2 years in the same town. And
How much did you get paid for that?
Pardon?
How much did you get paid for that?
I got paid $1 a year.
I thought you did.
And I still got the dollars on my The premier of the province, Mr. Bennett at the time, got me involved in this, and he asked me if I would I turned him down actually the first time. And he said, and I took him out in the boat, and we have a boat in Vancouver, and he asked me if I would help him put on this World's Fair. Now, most of you won't have heard of it or been there, but this was like 1983, 84, long time ago. So I said, well, he said, I want to talk to you. So I took him out in our boat for dinner, premier of the province. And he said, I want you to take the job on of putting on a World's Fair in Vancouver in 1986. And I said, well, look, I'm trying to, build a company, and that takes a lot of time. I gave my big long speech why I was too busy and I wanted to try. I got bank debt and I got all of this. Well, he says, Jimmy, has BC been good to you? I said, British Columbia. I said, yes. Well, he says, if it's been good to you, who else can I go ask? I said, you're absolutely right. I'll take the job. Don't misunderstand me. They're fine company. But they didn't like the fact that I took on a Toyota deal, but I didn't break any contract. I had no contract that said I wouldn't do it. And I could see in British Columbia, the market was moving to small English cars, Austin, Hillman, and when Toyota came along, it was what the public wanted. And of course, the market share went like this, and General Motors were not in that portion of it. And so I made the decision that this was the right thing to do for my customers, and I did it.
So over the years, you've had privilege, I would say, to meet so many world leaders, kings, queens, presidents, prime ministers. Of all of those people that you've met over the years, who impresses you the most?
Margaret Thatcher.
And why?
Pardon?
And why?
Well, Margaret Thatcher, when Ronald Reagan, I'm still on the Presidential Foundation Board of Ronald Reagan. And he put me on the board. And I can tell you that when the war was on, that Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher they talked a lot. And Margaret Thatcher was very influential with anybody that she dealt with. That woman was, I think in my lifetime, Margaret Thatcher was the most impressive person that I've ever met.